But what I will say is that if a card is not searchable, it better be really, really good when you do draw into it. Let's get into some new cards. You probably have already seen this one though, but I do want to talk about it a little bit because we haven't discussed it on the channel here. And these are two new non-engine generic cards from frickin' Legacy of Destruction. So it's a new quick play spell card. It features a few notable cards in the artwork here. So again, Metatronius, quick play, activate once per turn. Target one face-up non-token monster your opponent controls. Special summon one monster that has two or more of the same type, attribute, and or attack from your hand, deck, or extra deck, but its effects are negated. And if you do negate the targeted monster's effects, then if those two monsters have the same name, you can match both face down. Your opponent cannot activate the targeted monster's effects in response to this card's activation. Very, very interesting text on this. I really do like the creativity in offering like going second opportunities to players. I think the card designers over in Konami have been especially good with this type of utility, probably since Rise of the Duelist for the last couple of years, but now we got a lot of these cards. Like a lot of like really specific niche one-for-one interactions that could do a lot if you play them. Most of them didn't see play, but I think this one might see play, especially if you're talking about like a very... The thing is, I think this card excels in like a narrow format, not like a super wide format as we have today. But let's break it down. So you target a monster, special summon another one with two of the same type, attribute, and or attack. So it has to have at least like the same type and attribute, or the same type and attack, or the same attribute and attack, or the same type and attack. Or I said that already. From your hand, deck, or extra deck. So what this means is that you can target your opponent's Baron de Fleur, you can target your opponent's SPL Knight, you can target your opponent's Snake Eye stuff. And if you play this in your deck, and I'm sure people are going to find ways to like proc this with just like a Kaiju, giving your opponent a Kaiju, and then you can sort of control what is on their field, right? You already know that you will have a monster in your deck that matches that, or extra deck, right? If you think about like the last couple of YCSs since Age of Overlord, we've seen that people's extra decks have been narrowing down because your end board would usually consist of something like a Baron or a Little Knight, because those are the two strongest cards in the game right now, like the best end board pieces. It is negated, and it's not like negated until the end of the turn. It's negated. It will not be live. Like if you summon a Baron, you will have to get rid of it, but it does provide you with a body, and it does also negate that opponent's monster. I think it's kind of like a variation on Forbidden Droplet, if I'm being honest. Like it's a different take on Droplet. Droplet can take out multiple targets, but it is more cost heavy. And this doesn't really have a cost. It just has like a prerequisite for like the activation condition. That's basically what it has. So I think this card is good. The question is, like, when you have non-engine cards, like, let's think about the side deck. Like, you start building a side deck today. Like, today you're going to a tournament tomorrow. The immediate, I think it's like 8 or 9 cards that you put into the side deck automatically. Like, what are those cards? Automatic, we already know what's going on. So there's like 3 Nib, 3 Droll. That's almost automatic at this point. Maybe a Duster, which is also automatic. You need to have this kind of card. Maybe Thrust, or maybe like Cosmics, or maybe Lightning Storms, or maybe Evenlies, depends on what the deck you play. And then you're left with like 6 more slots. After you've got maybe Phantasme 2. That's also 3, because a lot of people have been playing Phantasme, Book of Eclipse, Econ, stuff like that. Things that are extremely, extremely good. Yeah, 3 Droll, 3 Rocks, Board Breakers, Dark Ruler, stuff like that. Exactly. So it's already like, you already have like a preconceived notion of what the side deck looks like in this extremely like wide format, which is not going to change because the balance didn't really narrow the format. It just balanced out a lot of decks, and it was a really good balance in my opinion. But let's say it's not mainable, then you have the side deck, then you have like 3 to 6 spots in the side deck. Do you put this card into your side deck, or do you put in like a Droplet, which is maybe a little bit better and can't be negated by other things, or you put in some tech card that your deck can run really successfully? I'm definitely gonna experiment with this when this card becomes eventually like relevant for us in the next format, like after Phantom. But I think it's cool. Albaz fans, rejoice. So this is Blink Out, another quick play, and another pretty good card, I would say. Another pretty good card. It features a scene from after the Albaz story. You can see Fallen of Argyros, a card that has seen very little play, even though I think this card is busted. So, Blink Out, target one Link monster on the field, return it to the extra deck, then you can special summon one of the materials used for its Link summon from your graveyard. So it's sort of like a defusion or a desynchro for Links. It doesn't summon all the materials. That could be extremely busted, but there's no limitations here, right? It's the target that returns is non-negated. It doesn't die in the end phase. It doesn't return to the hand or anything. It just stays on the board. Again, this is a super 1-for-1 in most cases, because you would probably want to return a monster from your opponent's side of the field, and which means that unless it's unless it's an Unchained monster or Goddess of the Closed World, you don't get a monster back because you don't have the material. You just bounce it. It's a quick play, compulsory evacuation device for Links specifically. So that already narrows down the possibilities and what you can actually do with this card. We are sort of in a Link meta right now. Like most decks do end on a Link on board. What you could do with this, with your cards, is if you go into something like, this could be kind of busted, but super situational, I feel like. Imagine going into like IP and something else into Little Knight effect. Then if the Little Knight sticks, the next turn, on your opponent's turn, let's say, you can bounce back the Little Knight, summon back the Masquerena, make another SP, and use the Banish effect again. So you can essentially make like 2 Masquerenas. That's like one thing. Another thing is like Unchained again. If they use your monster, you can bounce back their Link and bring back the material they used from your side of the field. This suffers from the same problem as any other, like, I think people don't really like the fact that you say like a card is not searchable, therefore it's not good. But what I will say is that if a card is not searchable, it better be really, really good when you do draw into it. You know what I'm saying? So like, think about the non-engine cards you play in the deck. So what I'm trying to say is that if a non-engine card is not searchable, right? If a card is searchable in your deck, even with Thrust, even though that's like a caveat, I'm going to put an asterisk on it, but if it's not searchable, it should be able to do enough on its own, right? So when you draw into an Imperm, an Ash, a Droplet, a Talents, a Thrust, Prosperity, whatever, right? It can do enough on its own without having required any setup from your opponent. And this is the problem that I have with this card as well. It requires additional setup, and it requires your, this doesn't necessarily require your opponent to do anything, but it requires you to play Links and stuff and have a good reason to do this. So I feel like this card was designed to get rid of opponents' monsters, but it doesn't make it super attractive to do that because then it becomes a bounce. So they kind of incentivize you to use your own monsters, but if I already have the field control, I should be winning. I don't need this card. I think it's like interesting and cool, and I love the artwork, but I don't think it's like, not sure if it's it. Yeah, I think this kind of wraps up our new cards portion. What do you guys think about these 2 cards? I like that they print just like staple non-engine generic stuff. I do like when they do that. Because eventually you're gonna get a card that is extremely busted.